Thanks, Dan. Good afternoon, guys. So John Vlastelica is my name. I spent most of my career on the corporate side. So I was the first tech recruiting manager hired at Amazon in March of '98 and got to help scale up Amazon in the early days. I was there about 6 years. I was recruiting director when I left. And I also led global recruiting at Expedia for a while, and have an opportunity to work with a lot of really interesting companies. A lot of the brands up here are very big brands, work with all sizes of companies. I don't put this up there to impress you. I didn't mean for that slide to be up there that long, but one of the reasons I put this up there is because I've had the opportunity to hold focus group conversations with literally over 1,000 hiring managers now after doing this business for about 9 years. And our business is consulting and training, as Dan said, and talking to hiring managers about what the best recruiters do differently as recruiters when it comes to kind of managing client relationships, managing hiring manager relationships. And it's great because one of the things that we hear a couple things pretty consistently, and I want to highlight two of those for you today. But one of the things we hear about has a lot to do with stepping away from what can feel like a kind of a customer service kind of role and stepping into something that's a little different. And so what I want to do today is to highlight for you two things that I think really great recruiters do differently. And I want to share two stories as a way to do that. The first story is about a recruiter that I inherited as part of about a 20-person team. She was the number 1 or number 2 producer on the team. She was fantastic. So of course, immediately as a new leader coming in, I want to say, what does she do differently than the rest? One of the things that she did differently is she really took her role to be something other than kind of a subservient partner. She really saw herself as the expert in the role, right? And that's what a lot of us strive to do. One of the things that she was fantastic at, though, is she really had clarity on her role as helping the hiring manager to be successful. And that is different than making your hiring managers happy. Do you guys agree? And so one of the things when I studied what she did differently, one of the things she was phenomenal at was pushback. And I'll tell you, I see a lot of recruiters that will talk about educating and setting expectations and trying to have the difficult conversation. But when I see them in action or when I go and talk to their hiring managers, the hiring managers describe the role they play as pretty transactional. I'm not saying that's anyone in this room, but I'm saying that's something that as we grow in our careers as recruiters, when you start off, you feel a little more transactional. You don't have maybe the street cred yet or the confidence to push back, or maybe you don't have the market intelligence to push back. So when I was studying what this recruiter did differently, I started talking to her a little bit about, so what kind of conversations do you have, and where do you push back, and how do you push back in a way that doesn't make you sound like you're not fighting for them or fighting for a great candidate. I don't want you to sound like you're lowering the bar. I don't want to push back and say, you want this, you can't have that. So how do you talk about that? So we had some conversations about that, and it reminded me of a conversation that I had when I was a more junior recruiter at a wireless company in the early wireless days. And one of the things that a project manager came and taught me about I think he called it the triangle of truth or something. And it's the speed, quality, cost trade-off. Have you guys seen something like this before? So the idea is that in recruiting, we're primarily working with 3 variables when we're talking to hiring managers. So imagine you're having a conversation with a hiring manager and she's asking you to go find something that's going to be really, really hard to find. One of the things that this recruiter did, one of the things that I think really good recruiters do, is they have an honest, transparent, expectation-setting conversation with hiring managers that really highlight these 3 variables we work with. In recruiting, we really work with cost, which is typically the salary for the candidate. Sometimes it's the budget we have to spend on the search, but cost is really the salary. We work with speed, which is time to fill, how quickly you're going to get the job filled. And of course, we've got quality. And by quality, I don't mean we hire someone good or someone bad like it's binary. I mean whether or not this is a perfect profile match. 12 years experience, Ivy League MBA, a computer science degree from this school, and 5 years of product management experience. Like that's like a perfect profile match. Are you going to get that? I don't know. And so the idea here is that if you think about this as kind of the law of recruiting physics, the idea is you can't optimize for all 3. You have some trade-offs to make. I highly recommend you draw a picture of this on your hiring manager's whiteboard in their cube or on a piece of paper and talk them through. And the way you talk about it, of course, is that if we want to optimize for all 3, good luck with that. It's going to be hard. The idea is if you want someone really, really cheap, really, really quickly, what's the trade-off? Quality. And by it's not like you can't have someone good. The idea is, you want 10 years of experience. We can't afford 10 years of experience. Or we're not going to find someone like that quickly, right? There's a trade-off to be made there. If you want someone really, really fast who's really, really good, It's going to cost you, right? You're going to have to pay for it, and and especially on the speed side, you want someone really good, really, really quickly. It's going to cost you a bigger sign-on. We have to think about salary. And if you want someone who is really, really good, really, really cheap, it's going to take forever. I have to find someone that does not know their value in the marketplace. I have to find someone who is moving from Des Moines to Silicon Valley, who will think that an $80,000 a year job is phenomenal and they can't wait to get, right? I mean, that's the kind of BS we have to do with our hiring managers sometimes, but with candidates. But that's one of the opportunities is to have that conversation. And one of the things that I've heard from a lot of hiring managers when I've personally delivered this conversation is they go, John, this makes total sense because we live and breathe this. When we think about managing a project or shipping a product out to the marketplace, we're working with a budget, we have speed, and we have features. And we talk about this. This is our language. You're speaking our language. Highly recommend you guys take this. That seem like something you guys could use? Anyone have a version of that similar to, but not the same as, but yeah, some version of that? I think it's really helpful. The second thing I want to talk about is another guy called me, one of our clients. He said, I'm having a really hard time with a hiring manager. This guy is an ass. He doesn't engage well. He is completely unrealistic. And I'm really struggling to get him to be the kind of owner around recruitment that I need. And I, of course, said, welcome to recruiting, right? That's why you make the big bucks, is for those kinds of guys. So he's describing this person that he's having a really hard time working with. And I started to ask questions. I said, so what's broken? What's behind this kind of bad relationship that you had? And he said, well, I just don't think he really sees the role that he plays in recruitment. He thinks that I own recruiting for his team and I work for him. And the reality is I'm a steward of talent for the company. I have multiple hiring managers I work with, and I can't accommodate every process change he wants. He's just really challenging to work with, and not a lot of people have had success. Can anyone relate to that kind of manager ever in your career? Right? They're everywhere, right? So one of the things that I started talking about, I said, so what do you think this manager cares most about? Like if you want to influence someone, you need to understand what their motivators are. And there's a hint up on the screen. But what do managers care most about in recruitment? Do they care about compliance with our process? Do they care about diversity? Do they care about your HR metrics? Do they care about whether you win a candidate experience award or whether or not you guys are highlighted as having a best practice in some article? What do they care about? They care about really good talent really, really fast, right? And so one of our opportunities when we're having conversations with hiring managers is to always think about how can we frame, when I'm trying to influence you, when I'm trying to engage you, when I'm trying to get you to step up and lead as a hiring manager, to play your role as a hiring manager, I need to frame whatever I'm talking about generally around those two things, speed and quality. And so the question is then, so how do we do that? One of the ways that I do that, and one of the ways I coach this recruiter to do that, is to talk about your process a little differently. So how many of you during your strategy kickoff meeting walk the managers through some sort of process? You guys do that? And what does that look like? Is that do you have something to hand them? Like what do you have in the back? You just raise your hand. Yeah, what do you have to walk through process? Okay, so you build it together, and so you draw something out. You're going to do this, I'm going to do that kind of thing, right? Yeah, how many of you talk about timelines in the process? This step takes this long, this step takes that long. Do you do that? And where do those timelines come from, Jennifer? Great. So Jennifer was saying, for those who can't hear, is there's a lot of opportunity for us to take past data and say it typically takes this long. Here's something that I use, and this is a lot. You guys can obviously get a copy of this. What I like to do, and most organizations have some version of this. You have the big process steps, and these are pretty similar across companies. That's the middle column. On the left-hand side is to identify how long the step in the process typically takes. So the idea would be, for this piece of the process, getting us kind of together and locked on what we're looking for takes about a week to get that scheduled and done. Takes several weeks to source and screen candidates, interviewing and making a decision takes this long, whatever. You walk through this. The piece that I think is missing at this stage in the conversation is the third column. One of the things I think that's really important to do early in the relationship is set expectations on what typically causes delays. Why do I talk about delays? Because that's what hiring managers care about. They care about speed and quality. I want to frame their role in the process and frame it into something that they care about, which is speed. So I say, what are the kind of things that typically cause delays? These are the kind of things that cause delays. If you don't give me feedback on the candidates I'm sourcing for you, or if I have an unrealistic candidate profile, or I don't have the kind of budget I need to go get this talent, which means we didn't have the kind of triangle conversation, it's going to take longer, right? I'm going to have to find that person from Des Moines, and I'm going to have to trick them into coming here. You go through each one of these and you talk about the kind of delays. These are examples that I built here. You'd obviously want to build those for your own company and base them on real world things that can happen in your company. So I worked at a client, or one of my companies I worked at had a hiring manager who traveled like 30 weeks a year. That was the primary problem with his time to fill number. That was the primary frustration for him, was we weren't filling recs fast enough for him. The reality was the guy just wasn't available. He just wasn't around. So we identified a proxy as a solution. Who can act on your behalf when you're traveling? Something simple like that. So the idea here is that you talk about the process in the same conversation. You talk about the important role, the critical role that the hiring manager plays in driving speed. And that is a real big missed opportunity area for some of us, is to not get into that level of detail. Then the question you ask, of course, when we're talking about this is say, hey, it typically takes, Jennifer tracks time to fill at her company. Let's say it typically takes 55 days to fill a software engineering role. It's taken as fast as 40 days. It's taken longer than 90 days. Would you like to hear, hiring manager, what the hiring managers who fill software engineering roles in 40 days do differently? Would you like to hear what the hiring managers who find top software engineers for our company do differently? When you frame it like that, 99% of the time, the answer is going to be yes. Of course, they're going to want to hear that. And then you talk to them about what they can do to speed things up. Does that make sense? So having this conversation is critical. So I want to highlight those two things. These things have been somewhat game changers, I think, in that client management, building relationship, establishing credibility with our hiring managers. And so with that, I just want to say thank you guys very much.